All right. Hi, guys. We are back in Eastern Healing Land and we are ready to talk about 5 elements. So, up to this point, we've been kind of building along in a track, talking about the history of traditional Chinese medicine, and then yin and yang, deficiency and excess, vital fluids, and we've kind of been going along in that one track. And I want to pause for a moment and acknowledge that 5 elements can kind of feel like it's a little bit out of left field compared to the other things that all build on each other very well. So the reason for that is that China is a very big place and it was not always all one country. Even today, there's a northern part of China that speaks a different language than the rest of the country. And when they were codifying traditional Chinese medicine, and organizing it, they kind of brought together many different ancient practices and organized it all and got it all integrated together to live under one roof. And so this 5 element business is going to be a little different than the yin and yang and some of the other stuff. But it's still very foundational to traditional Chinese medicine in particular. And I want to say that, like, you can talk about traditional or ancient Chinese philosophy for a long time and not necessarily talk about 5 elements, even though it is in there. But if you're talking about traditional Chinese medicine, the conversation about 5 elements is completely integrated. Along with yin and yang, 5 elements forms the foundation for TCM completely. So these two ideas of yin and yang versus 5 elements emerged in China at about the same time, and together they really marked the shift from thinking about illness in terms of evil spirits and shifting from that towards thinking about wellness versus illness as a spectrum that you can influence with your own lifestyle and practices. So, and also understanding contagion and stuff like we've talked about before. So now I do want to say that 5 elements, using the word elements, is the most common translation for Wu Jing, which is the Chinese, which I'm sure I'm pronouncing horribly, but there you go. And it is the one that I'm going to use, because if you do additional reading on this subject, that's the phrase you're going to find is 5 elements. However, even though Wu does mean 5, Jing does not mean element in the way that we think of elements in the West. It means more like movement or process or transformation, right? So if you're stuck on this ancient Greek idea of elements as foundational pieces of matter that we have here in the West, this is going to be tough for you, because these elements are not like those elements. Conceptually speaking, they are very different. We're talking about different things here. So it's really more accurate to think of these 5 elements, the Wu Jing, as 5 processes, 5 phases of natural phenomena, really. Because one thing about Taoist philosophy is the understanding that all things change. And so when they're talking about these 5 elements, they're talking about these 5 different processes, 5 different ways of changing in the universe, right? And it encompasses, and they are classically named after after substances like air and wood are substances. So they're named after those things, but they encompass so much more than like the physical matter. And so I am going to continue to use the word element because that's the most normal translation for you to start to think about and familiarize yourself with. But just bear in mind that it's not the same as the Western elements. And you will sometimes see them called the 5 phases, but that is much less common. So there you go. Now, if you've chosen to read the Eastern Healing Traditional Chinese Medicine portion of your Tappan's Handbook from class, you'll see that they include 5 elements, but they kind of jump into giving a lot of examples and correspondences without really explaining why you need to know or what you're going to do with this information. And so I want to remedy that a little bit just in terms of talking about the big concepts before we jump into each individual element itself. So really, the key feature, I guess, of the 5 elements is that the relationships between these 5 elements, between these, I keep doing this because they form a circle, the relationship between these 5 elements and the processes that they go over is like a roadmap for the relationships of our internal processes. Our meridians and our organs. And yes, organs is a bad translation. We'll talk about it more next week. And so let's just kind of break it down because what it is that each meridian, each organ system that you have in your body is associated with one of the 5 elements. And so the patterns with which we see the elements interact with each other is mirrored in the patterns of like how our bodies and how our organs and meridian systems interact with each other. And I'm going to give you, this may be jumping the gun, but I'm going to start by giving you a little example. All right. Now, one of the 5 elements in traditional Chinese medicine is wood. And another one is earth. Now, wood is described as being controlling or limiting to earth. So that is one aspect of the relationship between the wood element and the earth element, is that the wood element controls earth. And the examples would be that like plants can hold topsoil in place, or plants can break through stone, right? So wood controls earth. That's one aspect of their relationship. So you take in your body a organ system or meridian system associated with wood. One example would be the liver. And remember, I'm not talking about your physical liver. I'm talking about your qi, your energy, right? But more on that next week. So the liver, right? That's just an example of a wood organ. And then you have an example of a earth organ, which would be your spleen, is considered to be an earth organ. And so because the element of earth, or the element of wood, controls the element of earth, in your body, if you are out of balance, it can overact on earth. And so you'll see a pattern described as liver overacting on spleen. So, that gives us a whole host of different symptoms and things going on there. So for example, when it is out of balance, a corresponding emotion to the wood element is anger. Whereas a balanced corresponding emotion to earth is concentration. So they're saying anger Like if you have this imbalance between your liver and your spleen, your anger and frustration can overact and disrupt your ability to concentrate, right? And they are also presenting a solution for people who are having difficulty concentrating due to frustration. They would help remove the excess that's building up in that liver meridian and strengthen the spleen meridian and its ability to fight back and hold its own, right? So the gist is we are removing excess, we are strengthening deficiency, we are knowing the pattern. By knowing the patterns of the 5 elements, we know which meridian and which organ system we are directing our focus to. By knowing the meridians that we're going to learn next, we know how to access the energy systems in our body that we are looking for. And by knowing the vital substances and how to and where they live in our body, we know what it is that we are treating. Are we bolstering spleen qi? Are we bolstering the deep kidney yin? Are we strengthening the blood in the heart meridian? So by putting these pieces together, that's where we get our treatment model. And I know, like I said, diving into traditional Chinese medicine can really feel like drinking from a fire hose. It can really feel like you're drowning in details. But think of it like a table. And you have this table presenting your traditional Chinese medicine treatment model. And that table is standing on legs, right? It has the leg of understanding the nature and principles of yin and yang. It has the leg of understanding that how qi in the universe is differentiated and becomes the vital substances in our body. It has the leg of understanding the 5 elements and their relationships and how they affect each other, and the leg of did I already say meridians? Whatever. It has these legs, these pillars that it stands on, and they kind of form a balancing act to bring everything forward. Now, I'm going to repeat what I have said in the past. It is really easy to jump down the rabbit hole and do a lot of extra digging, and I love it, and I encourage you to do it, but wait until after this semester because there are many, many things that are very similar to each other, and I don't want them to distract you so that you get stuff wrong on the test when there was no need for you to do that. So anyway, let's go ahead and move on. We are not here to learn shiatsu, so I will try to keep it clear and simple in terms of these situations. So first, let's talk about wood, because we already kind of talked about it a little bit. Now, the main quality of the wood element or the wood process in our body is that it grows and expands out from itself like a tree, growing and expanding its branches, growing and expanding its roots. And so the wood element is seen as relatively young. In that it expands, it grows, it lives, it changes, it wants to affect its surroundings. In ourselves, we express our wood element when we reach out from ourselves to affect the world around us. If we are in a relatively healthy and balanced state, that reaching out would generally be in a benevolent, helpful, healthy way. to be a force for positive change in the world and a force for good and make a positive impact and a difference in people's lives. I like to joke that a balanced wood element is the superhero, is correlated to like the superhero archetype. They want to be doing things and they want those things to be helpful. Obviously, all of these things, though, can go out of balance. When your wood element is out of balance, then the corresponding like emotion is anger, or frustration. It's agitation. You might be shouting. You might be petty. You might be sticking it to someone. You're still reaching out and you're affecting your environment, but now you're doing it in a way that is that's not in a good place. You know, you don't care about being beneficial to the world. You're just mad and you might feel pent up and you just want to break something. You know, that would be a unbalanced, out of balance, out of harmony wood element. Alternately, if we aren't in a good place and our wood element is deficient, then you might be looking at someone who's more timid, unable to make a decision, unable to speak their mind, unable to get moving. And so that would be a different type of way that the wood element could be out of balance. And so in terms of like thinking excess and deficiency, when the wood element gets like its classic form of excess is doesn't have to in terms of being pathological, in terms of being a problem, it usually has to do with feeling stifled and pent up and frustrated, and you just want to break through whatever is constraining you, right? And then the deficiency again would be that timidness, can't make a decision, too timid to reach out, too shy, that kind of a thing. A classic wood personality would be like an adventurer, someone who loves challenges, someone who loves competition, and generally someone who also dislikes authority and restriction, someone who just wants to be free, to get out there and compete and make a difference, and they don't necessarily want to play by your rules. Which brings me to a little side point here. All of us have some type of expression of each of these 5 elements within us. However, the natural balance of where you are at is not necessarily meaning that every single element or every single phase will be completely equal all the time. There are absolutely people who are wood people, and they're just always out there, always competing, always gotta have a move on. And that's just the way they are, and they're healthy and well balanced in that state, right? And so as we go through these, you may think of people who are like, oh yeah, I know someone who's like that. And as long as they in themselves, as long as each element is healthy, it doesn't have to be equal. I hope that makes sense and that you know what I'm talking about there. Okay, so next, fire is the next one. Fire flares upward. That is its primary characteristic. Fire flares upward. So wood reaches out. Fire flares up. And it is seen as the most yang of the 5 elements. From your book, on page 579, they state, it affects our ability to feel warm, both physically and emotionally, which is true. It's an accurate description in TCM. But in addition to that, fire also, like when they observe fire, they see it sparking and dancing around. And so it's also associated with like joy and excitement. and spontaneity also. So in an unbalanced state, fire would be associated with like mania, or in excess, or hate, also hatred and bitterness in deficiency, because you're lacking warm, joyful connection, right? So classic fire personalities would be outgoing people. Hi, sweetie. You woke up from your nap. Yeah, you can come sit on my. I'm doing a video for my students. Come on. So a classic fire personality would be actors or people like.
Mommy, you are talking to your friend.
Yeah, I'm talking to my phone.
Phone?
Yeah, or natural salesmen also. And also a classic go for it type businessman, because they're on the move, they're energetic, they can roll with the punches, and they want to reach up and grow up from their current position. The next element is earth, and its primary characteristic is that it is neutral or stable, right? So it is seen as relatively yin, and in ourselves, earth energy allows us to feel rooted.
Why are you talking to your phone?
I'm making a video. I'm making a video for my class. Yeah.
Papa.
So it allows us to feel rooted and secure, and also would allow us to nurture others, because we have that stable foundation.
Why are you talking to your phone? What's this?
This is my no. That's my microphone. That's so they can hear me well.
Please, I hold it where you put on it.
No, I'm gonna keep it right here, but you can play with it when I'm done. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So a healthy earth element within us. Also.
Why those toys play with a cord?
Yeah, but your toesies are playing with my cord, I know. Also allows us to hold on to our integrity and altruism.
Mommy, what's this?
I'm not going to have time to redo this video, guys. I'm really sorry about this. I just have to get it up. I need to finish what I was saying, okay? Do you want to play quietly with your dolly?
Maybe later, maybe.
Okay. So, because when we feel like
maybe
rooted.
I play with this hair tie.
Okay. When we feel rooted in ourselves and stable on our own foundation, then our integrity and our altruism and our nurturingness is much easier to access and present to the world. So if it is out of balance, we might give too much and deplete our reserves, because our own stability is
almost done, Mom.
I have a little bit more to go. When we are on our stable foundation, it's easier to see our own boundaries. So when our earth element is depleted, those boundaries become much more shifty, and it can be easier to overgive. And if we are out of balance, we might also feel insecure and unable to withstand conflict, right?
Like me, I don't want to be sick.
Yeah, you don't want to be sick. That makes sense.
Yeah, I would
The classic earth personality is seen to be a 1950s housewife, basically, like a natural caregiver who is nurturing and a good peacemaker. But I would say that also people who know their boundaries and don't need to get upset about it, but just can be stable and calm and hold their ground, would also be an equally accurate depiction of a earth personality.
Thanks, Mom.
Hi, honey.
Hi, what's this?
That's my microphone. So the next element is water. And the primary characteristic of water is that water flows downwards. It is seen as the most yin element, and it sinks and it yields to the things around it. also, when you look at the surface of water, you often see the reflection of the world around, but not necessarily what's within the depths. And so in ourselves, water is...
Mama, I need to blow my nose.
Oh, you need to blow your nose. I think you should go find Papa.
No, I don't need to find Papa.
Okay. There you go. I gotta keep looking at my notes, guys, sorry. Okay, so water energy can be seen as our deep wisdom and concentration, because things are happening like deep within ourselves that are not yet manifesting on the surface. And it's also associated with...
I say bye to your phone.
I'm not done yet, honey.
Your friends.
I'm making a video for my students. So it is also associated with willpower and courage because water can act in powerful ways sometimes. And when out of balance, the classic emotion is fear. And your book gives some other manifestations like extreme conservativeness, but fear is the big classic one. Because it's like you're like flowing downwards too much and not knowing your own depths and having your own confidence and courage. So then the last element is metal. Metal, the primary characteristic is it contracts in and is a yin element. And hi, honey.
Why is that hand laying on your shoulder?
I don't know, but I think I'm going to have to give you over to Papa, okay?
No.
Okay, you need to sit quietly then.
Okay.
So in terms of contracting in, it's also said to gather in. And this is a reference to how metal is found deep within the earth. The nature of metal is that it can be made stronger by being worked with, but change has to come slowly or it snaps. And it can have like a polarity, like magnetic polarity. So it is strong enough to make weapons and armor from. And all of this has applications in traditional Chinese medicine and within ourselves. Metal energy likes order. It likes fairness, it likes tradition, and it likes perfection. So it leads us to have really high standards and can sometimes see the world in black and white terms, right? So when you think of metal as contracting in and being deep within the earth, this is seen to be like our core values and our core inner, like having metal, having a backbone, having principles. Is having that deep inner strength that knows right from wrong specifically, because that the magnetic polarity in metal is seen to reflect in like potentially seeing the world in black and white terms, but also in having a sense of right and wrong and seeking justice. Also seeking perfectionism can be one example of this. In good balance, metal feels calm and happy and as though things are right with the world. There is fairness, things are as they should be. And when it is out of balance, the primary out of balance emotion would be grief or sadness. Or potentially someone who lacks virtue. So either grief and sadness that like that maybe someone died too soon, or that something is happening that is an injustice, right? Or another type of imbalance would again be someone who does not have morals and does not care about right and wrong.
You can get this putty out.
Can I get this silly putty out? Okay. Yeah. So physically, the respiratory system is associated with metal element. So because when you have grief and sadness, you cry, and it affects your breathing. So physically, a weak respiratory system would be an indication that they need strengthening in their metal element. And also metal type traits like rigidness.
So where do I put this top, silly bunny?
You can put it right there, that's fine. So a metal personality, like the classic metal personality, is a judge or a clergyman. Someone who, remember how they care about justice, they care about right and wrong, and they can be slow to change. Highly traditional roles that are entrenched in a lot of rules, like clergy, like judges, are seen as like the classic metal personality type role. Someone who has really high standards, someone who has a strong regard for tradition and correctness, and would be expected to be a well of virtue. Like the whole point of having a judge or having a clergy person is that they're not a crooked, horrible individual. They understand virtue and rightness, right? So there are also smells and tastes and a whole host of other things associated with the elements that would be used in medicine and in assessment. So if someone cannot get enough sweet food, like earth is associated with a sweet flavor, and they just want sweet food all the time, it might be indication of deficiency in their earth element, for example. That would be one way you would use these correlations to assess your client and then decide on a treatment, right? So another thing that, maybe we should just call it this thing. I'm at 30 minutes for this lecture right now, and I don't have a ton of material left, but maybe it would be better if we just took a break, and I'll be back next time. Thanks, guys.